Land known as Palestine is the crucible for much of the turmoil in the Middle East. The inability of the Israelis and the Palestinians to resolve their territorial disputes after 68 years, over half a century, greatly contributes to the chaos in the region.
Iran can still be a place where thousands chant about the deaths of America or Israel or Britain. This was Tehran last Friday, on a march supporting Palestinian rights in Jerusalem.
Please note that this was a march supporting Palestinian rights in Jerusalem. Also, be reminded that the rights of the Palestinians are at the forefront in virtually every dispute in the Middle East.
The basic cause of the conflict is a sustained occupation of other people's land by the Israelis. And this is a direct violation of United Nations resolutions. It's a direct violation of the International Quartet's roadmap. It's a direct violation of the commitments.
State of Israel within the Green Line, the 1967 borders, 78% of the British Mandate area. The West Bank covers 21% of this area, and the Gaza Strip covers just over.
And this was the point in time with the opportunity to finalize the existence of Israel as a Jewish democratic state.
Since 1967, a lot of illegal Israeli settlements have been built on Palestinian land in the occupied territory.
Today, over 500,000 Israelis live over the Green Line.
Here's what happened 3 years ago when the army evicted just 9 families from a West Bank settlement called Amona. It was chaos, the first time since the creation of the state that Jews were in pitched battle against Jews. To Israelis of all stripes, it was not a pretty picture, and it made the government loath to try again. Officials fear that more battles to empty settlements could rip Israel apart. They're afraid that religious officers in the army, and there are an increasing number of them, would disobey any order to evict settlers.
Now there are 500,000 Israelis settled in the West Bank, and eviction is effectively impossible. So how do we get to a two-state solution?
Ben Vinisti used to be deputy mayor of Jerusalem.
Israeli leaders and Palestinian leaders are negotiating a two-state solution. What do you think the prospects are?
Prospects are nil. The geopolitical condition that's been created in 1967 is irreversible, cannot be changed.
Does this mean that the settlers have won?
Yes.
According to Netanyahu and the Likud, the Palestinians are supposed to make do with 60% of the West Bank. Palestinians enjoy overwhelming support for a state within the 1967 borders. What possible reason would they have to sign up for any of these unrealistic plans? And if they don't sign up, does anyone imagine that they and the Arab world will just sit back and let...
By encouraging over 500,000 Jews to settle in the West Bank, Israel has unilaterally eliminated a two-state solution. But what about a one-state solution?
The threat of a one-state reality endangers the founding vision for Israel as both a Jewish and democratic state. Israel cannot be Jewish, democratic, and control all the land at the same time. If it chooses democracy and the land, then it cannot be a Jewish state. Arabs will soon outnumber Jews between the Mediterranean and the Jordan. If it chooses to be Jewish and also to control all the land, then it cannot be a democracy.
Is a one-state solution the worst thing that could happen to Israel?
Probably the worst, probably good competition for the first place. It's extremely bad for Israel.
Because?
Because Israel had been established as to become a Zionist, democratic Jewish state, of course, with all the rights on the personal level and all the respect for minorities and others, but basically it's the fulfillment of a Jewish dream to come back to our place. And I think that I take it for granted that the only solution is to delineate certain line within which we'll have a solid Jewish majority for generations to come, side by side with Palestinian entity.
The Israeli solution is to say, okay, look, this two-state peace plan is predicated on a whole bunch of myths that ensure that it will never work. My plan, the policy that I put forth in the book, is for Israel to apply its laws and through it its sovereignty to Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank. And the Palestinians who live there will be accorded the rights of permanent residency status in Israel, so that they have full civil rights, they have full legal rights, indistinguishable from Israeli citizens. And they have the right to apply for Israeli citizenship, and if they abide by the conditions of Israeli citizenship law, then they can eventually be naturalized.
No matter how you describe it, that is apartheid, and it has no chance of being accepted by the Arabs or anyone else for that matter. So Israel, from 1967 through today, has made a two-state solution virtually impossible, and offers an unrealistic apartheid one-state solution, effectively making peace impossible. Accordingly, what comes next will start to make sense.
This Plan B changes the whole paradigm. We don't talk about the two-state solution because it's dead. But what we do is look at the reality on the ground. And the reality is there are people, Palestinians, living currently in Palestine who are discriminated against. So it would seem to me that the best thing the Palestinians can do is to dissolve the Palestinian Authority and revert to direct Israeli rule, and in a sense to say to Israel, here we are, you are ruling us, but you're pretending you're not. We are unequal. So we demand equal civil and legal rights as ruled by you, and we demand Israeli citizenship. So therefore, the struggle, which is a futile waste of time, then becomes converted into a struggle against apartheid, something familiar to the world, something which we've been through. So we have the civil rights movement in the United States, which we recall, and we have the struggle in South Africa.
Having unilaterally destroyed any hope for a two-state solution, Israel has laid the foundation for the demise of a Jewish democratic state. No need to be chanting death to Israel. They are doing it to themselves with the suicidal decision to settle the West Bank.